John Carpenter, Tobe Hooper, both forces coming together. Why didn't this work out as well as it could have? Hey freaks and friends, welcome to the 15th entry of the John Carpenter review series. Today we're taking a look at something that was a little bit different in Carpenter's career, but at the same time is a return to the classic format of pure, unadulterated horror in this three-pronged attack that was 1993's Body Bags.
Please be sure to stab that subscribe button and slash that bell icon so you don't miss out on a single video coming out on this channel. Try to make the best stuff for you guys, and that's the best way to stay in tune with what's going on here. Back to the video.
The film Body Bags was made as a pilot for what would have been a series on Showtime, and this would have sort of been a rival for the very popular, never heard of it, but it's apparently a popular show, Tales from the Crypt. It's a pretty good show. But this would have been a sort of competitor for Tales from the Crypt. However, the reason why Body Bags did not take off was because the production would have been sort of exported to Canada, where it would have been made for a lower price. You would have had to fly in actors and everything like that, and John Carpenter and his wife, who was his producer, Sandy King Carpenter, they felt that that would have sort of taken away from what would have been the great potential for Body Bags. So we never got the series out of this. But we did get this film that, again, was sort of a dry run pilot for it. Body Bags as a whole was directed by John Carpenter for 2 segments and Tobe Hooper for the final segment. And this is quite an interesting point in both filmmakers' careers. I mean, both of these guys have made a couple films that we've never heard of. I mean, Halloween, what's that? I mean, John Carpenter, what? Who? And Tobe Hooper, Poltergeist? Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Who knows? But these guys came together and did this project, and it was, again, sort of a dry run pilot for what would have been an anthology horror series for Showtime. The project, again, never really took off because of what Carpenter looked at as a sort of devalued quality. And that, I thought, was something pretty interesting about this. But this is an anthology, so this is going to be approached a little bit differently than most of the Carpenter reviews have been up to this point. And I sort of have campfire tales to go off of as sort of a way to approach anthologies. But with all that said, let's get into the meat and potatoes of Body Bags. The first segment in Body Bags is titled The Gas Station, which stars Alex Datcher and Robert Carradine, and we have quite a few other people showing up in here, like Peter Jason, who we've seen in a couple John Carpenter films up to this point, George Buckflower, David Naughton, Sam Raimi, Wes Craven, and you got a few other people in there. There's going to be a little screen telling you all the people that do appear in this one. But this is sort of classic Carpenter in a lot of the essence factor, where this has that sort of familiar territory in a lot of ways, where we have sort of seen this and felt this kind of story in Carpenter films of past. And there are a little bit of Easter eggs and sort of nods to older Carpenter flicks. That said, this is sort of that basic killer without a motive. I mean, it sounds sort of like Halloween, I guess. Not to mention that there is a callback to a little town called Haddonfield. I don't know, probably part of a small film series that might not be known to anybody. But The Gas Station is very much, again, classic Carpenter, where you have this young girl who is, for some unknown reason, targeted by a madman who has no apparent motive, which I think makes this pretty cool in a lot of ways. That's just an excellent exercise in tension, because you have this girl just working the graveyard shift at one of those gas stations that's like the building itself is a little boxed off island where she's in there protected by nothing but a locked door and just 4 sheets of glass. A small little back room, and the gas pumps are, 20 feet away, whatever, 30 feet away. Just one of those classic middle of nowhere gas stations. And she's sort of greeted by these sort of off the wall, quirky kind of customers throughout. And you can tell that she's made uncomfortable by a few of these, notably Wes Craven's character. I fucking love Wes Craven in this one. George Buckflower, who's back to classic Buckflower form here. And, we just slowly start to understand, okay, there is a serial killer on the loose here. This girl is very much by herself. This is not the ideal situation for a young lady. And the tension mounts, and because it is limited to like a 15-minute or less little sequence, it gives the story just enough time to sort of establish what it's about and get to the point pretty damn quickly. But considering its relatively short length, I think this one is paced pretty damn well and has pretty solid tension throughout. Again, very much classic Carpenter. For the most part, it's pretty well acted. I don't feel that anybody particularly overstays their welcome. Because again, you have interesting portrayals by Wes Craven and Peter Jason. They both play pretty cartoonishly characters who are just a little larger than life in their type of role. But they stay just long enough for you to enjoy their presence, but they don't overstay to where it's like, alright, come on, get to the next fucking character. And it's just pretty damn enjoyable, and you can kind of feel like everybody in this one, and this is probably the most heavily casted sequence, everybody is having fun in their role here, I feel. Like, you could just see it on screen. Just a lot of fun with the acting and the way that this little short story does play itself out. The scenery in this particular sequence, I think, is loaded with that classic Carpenter atmosphere where you have that pitch black sky and that wet black asphalt that is really helping to light the scene with the catching of the natural light and the neon lights. I think it just helps to make this one feel like it's really out there in the middle of nowhere. And this particular sequence was shot in the middle of bumfuck California, where they actually built the little gas station area where the main character spends a good portion of the runtime here. And that I thought was something pretty damn cool. Again, this takes place in Haddonfield, California, which is freaking awesome. Halloween wet dream. But with it taking place in sort of a small little gas station that has the workstation as sort of this small little isolated from the pumps, isolated from the public in a lot of ways, sort of setting, it helps to create this sort of claustrophobic feeling right off the bat. Like, just working in a little closed off cell just is an uncomfortable thought for me, honestly. Like, I've never worked at that kind of gas station, but I could imagine that would be not the most ideal situation. But with the gas station, I feel that this is a story that is simple to the point. It doesn't overstay its welcome, much like the actors who appear throughout. I think that it says what it's trying to say, and everything that happens within this segment I feel happens for a pretty damn good reason. There is a mural in the bathroom, which I think is a little... it doesn't have much of a purpose except for showing that the assailant in this is just an absolute batshit crazy human being. But for the most part, there's nothing that happens in here that seems to be for no reason at all. And again, the acting by all the people in this sequence I think is pretty on point. Again, Buckflower is classic Buckflower. Peter Jason and Wes Craven are a lot of fun. We have Robert Carradine in here. I think he delivers his role pretty well as sort of the psycho fucking character, playing Bill. I call him Psycho Bill in this because you have Dead Bill, played by Sam Raimi, for a quick little here, there, I'm a dead guy cameo, which was absolutely fun. But no, everything that plays out in the gas station I think is pretty damn phenomenal and makes this definitely a standout piece in Body Bags. And if this were made into a feature-length film, This could have been among Carpenter's best, but let's move on to the next one here. Our next sequence is titled Hair, and this one stars Stacy Keach, David Warner, and Sheena Easton. And this one I feel plays on a pretty realistic, almost pretty damn rational insecurity among males, that being hair loss. This hits especially close to home for a lot of male viewers, I'm sure, and particularly our lead actor Stacy Keach. This one I think is one of the funniest things that Carpenter has done in his career, aside from like Big Trouble in Little China and aspects of Starman. Much of the humor I think in this comes directly from Stacy Keach himself, in sort of that, the way he's overreacting with the insecurity. You've got quite a great bit moments of humor in this one where he puts this like hair darkener in his hair, and Sheena Easton kisses his head and says, "Come on, you gotta stop worrying." And all that grease and color just kind of smears onto her lips there. There's this great sequence where he's sort of trying to comb his hair over and make it look a little bit different, trying to hide his balding nature. And she tells him, "Come on, you're acting like a baby." He's like, "Well, why not? I've got hair like a baby." That line, I could be falling asleep watching this, and I'll hear that line. I will just fucking giggle in my sleep, because that line is just so damn comical. But Stacy Keach's character in this is dealing with the hair loss and that sort of feeling of being a lesser man because of it. Sort of something that he shouldn't have to worry about. It's like, dude, you're a badass fucking actor in Hollywood. Don't worry about it. But he worries about it all the same, and sees this ad for a hair growth, sort of an experimental hair growth company that is sort of directed by this guy called Dr. Locke. And they're like the Roswell something or other. This is just absolute great sort of character building here, because Dr. Locke, like hair, get it? And Roswell, that's going to make more sense later. But that just makes for an interesting thing for his character, because he's willing to do anything just to get his hair back. And if you guys know Stacy Keach, the man doesn't have a lot of hair, and he's going to fucking extreme lengths. So it's like, why not trust this quack on the TV? And there is something about hair that I think allows it to fit a little more naturally in the Carpenter pantheon, where you have these sci-fi undertones. There, again, with the alien invasion thing, sort of a spoiler, and sort of the bleakness of the ending for this character, I think just, again, allows it to fit in the Carpenter wheelhouse a little more naturally than the gas station, which just feels like a little too familiar of territory. This feels like new ground, but still familiar territory, and I think just allows for it to be, personally, my favorite out of the collection in this one. But it creates this sort of uniqueness where, again, you've got this humor, you've got the sci-fi, you've got this bleak horror of sort of the unknown, what the fuck is happening here. I think when you combine those elements with the acting in this, which is pretty damn serviceable, again, there's no real bad performance in here. I'd say the worst performance would probably be the hairdresser character. And again, that's not really a particularly bad performance. It's just the most cartoony of the bunch. But everybody in Hair seems to be having a lot of fun, and you can tell they're having more fun here than in the gas station. But when you combine all those elements, that helps to make this one of the most endearing sequences in the film, I think. And I just want to say real fast, guys, Sheena Easton, oh goddamn, she is a fox in this one. And Debbie Harry from Blondie, we get to see her in here too, as a sort of sexy, scary nurse. All I want for Christmas is Sheena Easton and Debbie Harry. Oh god, that would be great. Just have them admire my fucking hair. I'd be all about it. This one I think has probably the highest use of visual effects in all three of the sequences here. I think the practical stuff, like the crazy hair that's growing out of Stacy Keach throughout this sequence, is pretty well handled. It looks pretty good when it's just starting to get cartoonishly long, starting to grow out of his face like fucking crazy. And I think it looks pretty damn good. He sort of has this disheveled werewolf look going on. But the effects in this one that I don't particularly care for are sort of the close-up shots where you see the hair follicles growing out and the alien hair pieces. If you watch it, it'll make more sense. Those were handled with this 90s CGI, which just, I don't know, it's right up there with like the Langoliers as far as the way it looks. Not horrible, but it's so bad you gotta just fucking laugh at it and love it in a lot of ways. But body bags, sequence, hair, I fucking love this one. It's a lot of fun. Hair.
Give me a head with hair. Long, beautiful hair.
Hair was pretty fucking great. So taking a look at the third and final segment of Body Bags, we're looking at I, directed by Tobe Hooper, starring Mark Hamill and Twiggy, and of course we have a few other people in here, but those are our two main actors in this one. First off, I want to say that Mark Hamill is really great in this one, especially when he flips on to his psycho character. I think he really helps to sort of sell the performance in this one. This one follows a guy who is a professional baseball player in the minor leagues, might be able to make it into the major league, but he suffers an injury to his eye is in a result of a car accident, which really puts a damper on his career. And the story in this one overall, I think, is, first of all, super damn dark. And it sort of borders on that early 80s sort of super sleaze slasher, like in the vein of something like Don't Answer the Phone, where you have this character who's just the epitome of a sick serial killer. Just killers with mommy issues, you know, that's just always a really gross fucking territory to get into. And he has an eye transplant, and it's the eye of a recently executed serial killer, who is sort of that textbook fucking serial killer right there. But with that praise out of the way, this one I think feels pretty damn derivative. In fact, I think there was a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror that did the same thing, where the character Snake is executed and Homer ends up getting his hair, and the hair transplant sort of creates Homer to become this psycho character who wants to kill Bart. Hair and the eye transplant. That episode might as well have been Body Bags. But no, I do love the Roger Corman cameo in this one. I mean, the dude in this does not look like he's fucking 70, or pushing 70 at least. As of today, Corman is still kicking, so keep on kicking, Corman. But I is one that I think is really, again, despite being pretty derivative, it's a pretty well executed one. A lot of people, I think, feel like this one is the best out of the bunch, but I don't know, looking at this through the Carpenter lens sort of made me look at this one a little bit different, but trying to remove that Carpenter lens, it still doesn't feel like it is the strongest. Again, it has that sort of derivative nature where it feels like something we've seen before. We've seen this type of characteristic with Mark Hamill's character being this sort of good-going, happy guy who ends up becoming a fucking psycho. It is nice to see the character switch up there, but it just feels like very familiar territory, not just in the director's particular wheelhouse, but in the wheelhouse of horror altogether. I won't take away from it, though, that it's probably the most chilling sequence of the bunch. It has that same sort of dark feeling that we get in the gas station and that bleakness that we get in Hair, but it's multiplied on both fronts there, just really making for this one to be like the most chilling and most uncomfortable of the bunch, especially when you bring in a serial killer with those mommy issues. It just really creates this sort of gross feeling that is like, we really don't need to be in this, but we're here, so fuck it, why not? One thing I do like in the end of this one, though, is the particularly on-the-nose reference to the Bible passage at the end, where it's saying something about, if what you see offends you, then pluck out the eye. I thought that was pretty cool. Again, it might have been sort of low-hanging fruit, but I think that when you take the sort of heavy-handed Bible reference and pair it with a serial killer that's really over the top, There's something about that that just works in a really creepy way. Not to bash religion in any way, but something about that just goes hand in hand in a way that I think is really well done. And it just sort of helped to make that sort of little book ending, if you will, on this sequence just all the more stand out in a lot of ways. But the thing I really like the most in I is sort of that loss and control, loss of identity, that sort of prevalent theme that we got to some degree in Memoirs of an Invisible Man, not so much, but in The Thing, like, you take sort of that feeling of you are just a guy who wants to have your happy existence, but because of something, in this case an eye transplant, that causes you to sort of venture down a path of darkness. I thought that that was a pretty cool little thing to include in here. When I said that the gas station would have made for an interesting full-length feature, I feel like I specifically would have been probably the best as its own full-length, and that is keeping in mind that I feel that this is super damn derivative. I think that it would have probably made the biggest impact if it was just its own one-and-done 90-minute film by Tobe Hooper. Not my favorite segment, but I can't really take anything away from this one. Now we're going to take a quick look at this film's wraparound sequence, which is titled The Morgue. And this is basically just the getting us into each respective story. In here we have John Carpenter himself playing the coroner, who is essentially the sort of the crypt keeper type character for this one. In a lot of ways, I think that John Carpenter as the coroner is a lot less cringy with his jokes than the crypt keeper. But with that in mind, John Carpenter didn't really do as much as the crypt keeper, so there wasn't that extensive runtime to allow him to become just a bearer of bad jokes. I'm sure some of his lines are cheesy and maybe a little bit cringy at times, but I feel that it's just funny enough to where it does get a good reaction out of me just about every time I do watch this. But you can tell that Carpenter in this is having a lot of fun, and when you put him on the opposite side of the camera with just a little bit of makeup, I feel that he's a little less tense here than he is in, say, The Fog. He's just a little less uptight. He just feels like he's a lot more comfortable here. Super charismatic, and I just love the real Lon Chaney sort of aspect going on there, where he's got you can see his nostrils are sort of inflated by what looked like the cigar tips for like Phantom of the Opera. Just thought it was pretty cool to sort of get that, just that Chaney Sr. sort of vibe going on there. And listening to the commentary or looking at the behind the scenes footage for this, I actually felt pretty good knowing that, okay, I didn't just notice this and was mistaken. That was actually something they were sort of consciously trying to achieve there. But most of his morbid jokes are pretty damn solid. I think there's something about the deadpan delivery, I think, that makes them a lot more fun. And I don't know, just being that he's in a freaking morgue, I guess it just makes sense that the jokes come off as slightly deadpan. And we get the reveal that his character is not, in fact, a coroner, but a damn cadaver. Does it make a lot of sense? Absolutely not. But is it fun? Absolutely. And we get Tom Arnold and Tobe Hooper in here as the real coroners. It's just a lot of fun seeing those two guys in here. Tom Arnold is pretty funny with the little bit of screen time he has. Tobe Hooper just comes off as like the stoner that Tom Arnold is working with there. And I don't know, it's just a lot of fun to wrap around. They're short, sweet, and they just get us into the next story. Just a lot of fun. Now, as a whole, I do want to say Body Bags is pretty damn enjoyable. You have pretty good acting throughout the whole of the film. Carpenter's performance is probably the stiffest in terms of just the acting ability, but that's not to take anything away from him. He is damn enjoyable there. I think the acting throughout each segment is pretty solid. For the most part, there is a great deal of tension in most of the stories. And if there's not so much tension, there is sort of that suspense, like what the hell's going on here. Just really great stuff. I think that the music choice, that sort of rock score, I thought was pretty damn cool. Just the cinematography too, I thought was pretty damn solid by Gary Kibbe throughout. It's not anything too special in terms of the way it's shot. It's just, you can tell that this is sort of a very made-for-TV type of feel, but you have a lot of these familiar faces in here. People that we recognize from all kinds of other movies, people that are going to show up in other Carpenter films, which we're going to use that real quick to lead into the segment that you guys know I love, the Carpenter collaborators. We've got quite a few of them in this one. So in order of appearance, we're going to go, of course, Robert Carradine in here as Bill. He's going to come up a couple more times, I think in, I think he's going to be in Escape from LA, I think is going to be the next time we see him. Of course, we get Peter Jason, who's here doing one of 7 different appearances throughout the Carpenter series. He's got a small part in the gas station sequence. George Buckflower, again, doing standard Buckflower stuff. Get to see him, so that's a lot of fun. We have Stacy Keach, who's going to make another appearance, I think also Escape from LA, perhaps. When it comes to these later Carpenter films, I'm not as familiar with them as the previous ones. But we got Stacy Keach, and we're going to see him again. We also have David Warner, who a lot of you guys will recognize from like Ninja Turtles 2, or Titanic, Scream 2. He's going to show up again in The Mouth of Madness, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Love seeing David Warner. He was really great in The Omen. And we have Luke Skywalker himself, Mark Hamill, in here. He's going to show up in Village of the Damned. It's going to be a lot of fun to talk about him in that one. And of course, John Carpenter himself is not relegated to so much a cameo as much as he has pretty much the scene-stealing role as the coroner, who is again sort of our MC in this film. Just a lot of fun to have him as that master of ceremonies. But at the end of the day, guys, Body Bags I thought was a really fun watch. It's one of my favorite 1990s era Carpenter films to really take a look at. It's kind of, I don't really know if calling this one a film is the right way to approach it. I mean, sure, it is a film, an anthology film, but knowing that it was made as sort of a pilot for a show that never was able to take off, it just kind of puts it in a really weird spot in the pantheon, but that does not take away at all from the enjoyability of this film. And I personally would have loved to see what Body Bags could have become, but with all the whole idea of the production would have been moved to Canada and it would have been more expensive to bring in the actors, it was just, all those things were going to work against the quality that John Carpenter and his wife wanted for this project, so they just ended up leaving it as this one and done film. I will say that I am happy with the sample size we got, but I am morbidly curious as to what could have been. I mean, you guys know that I am sort of a spokesman for the Halloween as an anthology series, so naturally I was pretty damn excited to take a look into this one. But this is just a really fun entry to the Carpenterverse, and I think for me it's one of the most rewatchable of the bunch, especially in the later day Carpenter films. So at the end of the day, guys, Body Bags is going to be getting 3.5 deadpan jokes for a stiff crowd out of 5. That was my review for Body Bags, guys. Have you seen this one? Do you want to check it out? All the same, let me know down below, and be sure to play with some of those icons down there. Hit the little notification so you don't miss out on any of the awesome stuff that I have coming out for you guys. And as always, I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to come back next time. We might just go straight forward into the Mouth of Madness. All the same, something like that's going to be coming up. See you guys there.